Hey y'all, I'm Amani, and I'm excited to talk to you today about what is a grant. Let's dive in. This is my personal definition. A grant is a monetary resource distributed by an institution, federal, state, or local government, usually in response to a specific societal issue for a targeted purpose or population. What does all that mean, Amani? I'll show you, but let's start off with some funding sources that we're all familiar with. How do we usually get money? Here are four ways that we usually see money flow into our communities. Most popular, going into jobs, hourly or salaried employment, clocking in, clocking out, getting your check. The second one that we see a lot is crowdfunding. So online crowdfunds like GoFundMe, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, a whole bunch of people come together. Usually they are in one's network, but they can often be outside of the network. They can, be from people who you don't even know, strangers that want to contribute to your cause. That is a crowdfund, and they're usually based with like platforms that are online so that they can be distributed widely. Another thing that's kind of like a crowdfund is a mutual aid fund, but most mutual aid funds are in network, and so people will pop up with a mutual aid request for an emergency situation. So where crowdfunds are usually like a few weeks where people are funding, sometimes it could be up to a year that people are funding for a product to come out or for an event that's coming up. Mutual aid funds are for emergency purposes. So there's a very quick turnaround for those. People might be trying to get someone housing and they only have a week to do it. And so they put a cash up on their social media or something like that. That's more like a mutual aid fund than a crowd fund because it doesn't have an official online platform and it's not being circulated too widely outside of that individual's network or whoever the funder's network is. And then scholarships, we all know scholarships. We apply for them, sometimes we are nominated for them, and we get money towards usually an academic purpose. So let's apply that knowledge and see what we can learn about four different grant types. There are more, but these are the four that are most popular and that I think you'll come across more often and that I think are great to start with when you're just getting into grants. The first one is private foundation grants. We've also got mini grants, government grants. Those could be local, state, or federal. And we've also got my personal favorite, prizes, which are more commonly known as fellowships. So let's dive deeper into each of these grants. First, we've got private foundation grants, which average between $10,000 to $100,000. They usually are annual. So when you get a grant from a private foundation, in order to get another one, you have to reapply 1 year later. But sometimes they're multi-year, which means that you can get $100,000 for 2 years or $500,000 for 5 years. And every year you know that you're going to get a specific amount from this private foundation based off of one application that you put in. If it's multi-year, it will say that in the application. You never assume that it's multi-year. If it doesn't say that, then it's usually just a 1 year award. Where do these private foundations come from? Often they're corporate, but we've also got family foundations. So, corporate foundations we see in all different types of businesses. Banks like Wells Fargo, they have their own private foundation, all the way to restaurants, fast food restaurants. McDonald's has its own private foundation. And that's because these businesses make billions and billions of dollars a year, and they take a portion of those profits and donate them through their own private foundations to specific causes, usually to nonprofit causes. So these foundations, oh, and then there's also family foundations. So that's usually when it's not directly tied to a business. Let's say, like, the Johnson Family Foundation came together because they're a family of billionaires, and their great great grandmother established a foundation specifically to support Native American causes or Native American youth. There's usually a focus with the family foundation, and you want to make sure that what your work is applies to that focus when you apply. Corporate foundations usually have a range of things that they put their money towards, and it could be seasonal. So maybe in the spring, they do getting out the vote, voter registration stuff. In the summer, they focus on healthcare. And then in the fall, they focus on the youth for back to school stuff. So it really just depends on what's going on. Or maybe the corporate entity does something that's a little bit related to their business, but more often than not, it's not related to their business at all. McDonald's Foundation often does healthcare stuff. So it really just depends on, who's in the family at the time and who's on the foundation staff at the time and what their goals are. Moving on, often these foundations are concealed, so it's hard to know about when the application opens, when it closes, what types of things they're funding. And so it's really important to be a part of grant seeker communities, which is why I'm establishing this grant seeker community, so that there's a pipeline where people can find out about these different foundations and learn about what's going on and how to apply for grants from a source that is relatable. So, if you guys want to learn more about these types of grants that come from these foundations and how to make a proposal for these types of grants, definitely subscribe, stay tuned, sign up. With private foundations, the deadline usually isn't too quick. 2 to 6 months from the day that the application opens, and you usually can apply for them online, but some foundations require you to mail in your proposal, and some will allow you to email it. All right, mini grants. Mini grants you're going to see more often, but the amount is smaller. So it's usually less than $1,000, and they're usually restricted to nonprofits. Sometimes individuals can get access to mini grants. You definitely want to pay attention to that in the fine print of the grant. They will let you know if it's restricted to nonprofits. But mini grants are often much more widely promoted. You'll find them on social media. It's easier to come across them. But because they're so widely promoted, the turnaround is quick. Usually mini grants are for a specific purpose, and they'll put a mini grant out, and then by the end of the month, all the money is gone. So usually when you apply, you can get that money within like a week or two. Sometimes it'll take up to a month. But once you find a mini grant, make sure that if it's something that applies to the work that you're doing, that you apply for it quickly, because there's a quick turnaround with those. The next type of grant we're going to talk about is government grants. Government grants are my least favorite. And here's why. Even though they have the most amount of money that is distributed or dispersed through a government grant, it is very restricted and very, very tedious. Usually it's only for nonprofit entities, but there are some government grants, usually RFPs, requests for a proposal, is what you'll see if it's a business entity approved grant. Request for a proposal is kind of like application. The formatting is a little bit different. We can talk about how to format a proposal versus how to format an RFP in a later video. If you're interested in that, please let me know. But finding these types of grants is much, much harder. You need to be in a network in order to have access to these grants. So Wire Media is in a Michigan government network to see different RFPs and grant opportunities. I'm also involved in a federal network. With federal grants and state grants, they are so competitive. I think all government grants are, because even local, like county level grants, you might see Wayne County come out with their own grant. They can be very competitive. Like hundreds and hundreds of organizations are applying to these, because they are just more money, more attractive, but they're also more widely dispersed. So with government grants, you'll see applicants in other continents, in other countries, whereas with county grants, you're only going to see applicants that are serving that region. But yeah, they're much more competitive and they take a lot more work. So that's kind of the reason why they're not my favorite. But they also can take a much longer time to get the funds. But there's a much wider window to apply for the funds because there's so much work that goes into putting that grant application together. The last type of grant, this is my favorite type, is fellowships, which are also known as prizes. Fellowships have a wide range. So you could find a fellowship that's $25,000 all the way up to $1 million prizes for different types of fellowships awards. What makes fellowships special is because not only are you going to get money when you get a fellowship, but you're also going to get access to a network of people and coaches and support, mentorship that you wouldn't get with something like a government grant or a mini grant. You're getting access to a group of people, usually that are doing very similar work. And there's something special about being able to share your progress in your work, your challenges in your work, and being able to lean on other people who are just as knowledgeable in the field or in other fields that intersect with what you do. Usually, fellowships are defined. So some fellowships are just for nonprofits, some are just for businesses or revenue earning projects, and some are verse. And so the fellowship that I applied for, the Roddenberry Fellowship, was verse. And so I was an LLC. I was actually the only grantee that was an LLC when I was awarded. But fellowships are widely promoted. So when I found out about my fellowship, it was sent to me by someone that I was working with as a mentor in a juvenile detention center. And I didn't know about it, but she sent it to me because she came across it. And so I just put my application in. So when you find out about a fellowship, see what network, what types of people they've applied for in the past. That's another key. And we can do a video on how to think about what type of grants you want to apply for. And that's one key, is looking at who they funded in the past and seeing how relevant that is to the type of work that you do. Fellowship grants usually take between 6 months and a year to with their window and to disperse the funds. So when it opens, usually within 6 months is the deadline, and then it might take another 6 months for that money to come in and for the fellowship to begin. And another fun thing about the fellowship is there's usually activities and retreats and different things. So other fellowships that I know about are the Echoing Green is a cool fellowship, but there are also accelerator groups. Those are very similar to fellowships. I think they're pretty much like fellowships. So we can do a whole video on fellowships and talk really, really in depth about them. But that's how they compare to the other three types of grants. So those are the four types of grants. We've got government grants, we've got fellowships, we've got mini grants, and we've got private foundation grants. Grants are just as diverse as the topic issues that they are covering or the populations that they're serving. So these are some of the more popular, and I even listed them in order of like what's really hot right now. Based upon what I've seen in my expertise. But there are a lot of different fields. And if you're in one of these fields, then you should be getting grants for the work that you're doing. Environmental, technology development, AI, healthcare, youth development, education, disabilities, farming and agriculture, voter registration and GOTV, criminal justice, media, film, journalism, small business, especially if you're a woman or BIPOC, which Black, Indigenous, person of color, then you can get grants for your small business. And then there's also consumer-based product grants, which I would also call revenue earning projects. That's another keyword that you might see as it relates to grants. So as we close out, if you want more, please, please, please visit my website, sawarime.org/get, and sign up. Or you can just subscribe to my YouTube channel where you're watching this video. But if you want to sign up just to get personalized content from me, that's the best way to do it, is going to my website. You can get my new episodes to your inbox, and we're going to do Grant Seeker Sundays or Saturdays. I'm still thinking, but we're going to have an episode every single week where we dive into grants. And If you want help with doing a proposal template, I'm doing that. Grant opportunity notices, or even when I start doing consultation calls, you'll know about that and so much more. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to listen to me talk about grants today, and I hope you learned something. Let me know in the comments, what field are you in and what are you grant seeking for? And I look forward to learning more about it and learning more with you in a future episode. Bye.